Okay, so a while back, I had heard about, like, the early development of this movie. And it's like, okay, that sounds kind of an interesting story. And now that Abigail's out, it's a little odd to talk about this without some mild spoilers. So, let's get into it.
You all came highly recommended. You know the rules. No real names, no backstories, no cell phones.
So whose kid is she?
A very wealthy man who's about to be $50 million poorer.
I'm here to make sure you're safe.
What's your name? Mine's Abigail.
You can call me Joey.
Do you have any kids?
I have a little boy.
Okay, so what I mean by that is with the mild spoilers, I felt the trailers gave way too much away with this movie. And be warned now for some mild spoilers, but this movie's about a vampire. And the way this movie is set up, you're not supposed to really know that until partway through. For the first half of this movie, it's just a crime heist kidnapping movie. And it really doesn't insinuate any type of horror element early in the movie until like the halfway point, or not quite the halfway point, but by the end of the first third of the movie. And I knew going in that this was a horror movie, and I felt like something was a little bit lost when watching this movie, because it totally felt like this movie was supposed to be gone into as fresh as humanly possible. And it wasn't, because I watched the trailers. So if you're watching this and you've never seen any of the trailers for this movie, I would recommend you don't watch the trailers for this movie, because it's going to give away too much. And I think you should try and go into this movie as fresh as humanly possible. But like, going into the story, like, I kind of was intrigued by this setup, because this is a setup where honestly, there aren't any real good guys in this movie. You have a bunch of kidnappers, you have Abigail. And it's kind of like, who you want to root for more? They try humanizing some of the kidnappers, but in the end, they're kidnappers, so I didn't really care. But it was really the scenario that I was more interested in. And like, two of the highlights in this movie are Dan Stevens and Kevin Durant, or Duran, or I can never remember his last name, but he's a character actor who's over 6 feet. He always plays a big guy, and they were both great in this. Especially a few of the scenes where they're interacting with each other was priceless. Probably the real standout, though, was Dan Stevens. He had some of the funniest lines, and he was not the comic relief. He was kind of this straight and narrow, by the book guy, but he had some really funny moments in this movie. This isn't a comedy, this is a horror movie with some comedic moments in it. Keep that in mind. And in terms of the first third of the movie, I felt that there were some serious pacing issues with the first third. Like, there was a certain point of like, okay, can we get on with the movie? And there's just, when they got to the mansion, there's just a few moments lingered way too long that honestly I would have trimmed up a little bit. Now, that being said, there was a really solid scene with the entire crew at like the mini bar in the corner, like shooting the shit, that I thought was really excellent. You go back to a movie I previously reviewed, Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. One of the worst scenes in that movie was when they failed to give any of these characters backstories. Once they were in the middle of the second movie, it's like, oh shit, we gotta do something. Okay, everyone just tell your backstory real quick as we go around the table before the fight starts. It was sloppy, it was messy, it wasn't interesting at all, and it was one of the worst parts of that film. In this movie, before everything starts, there's kind of this really clever exchange where this guy's like guessing who they all are, because they're not supposed to be talking about themselves with each other in context of this movie. And this one person says, yeah, you're completely off. It gets to the point someone throws down $100 bills, like, if you can guess one thing about me, you get to keep that $100 bill. And this character, the main character, proceeds to correctly guess something about every single one of the characters in the group. It's an interesting exchange. It adds some natural character development with each of the characters, and it also shows that this main character is really clever, intelligent, and intuitive. And so I liked how this scene went a lot better than that scene in Rebel Moon went. Moving on to the other aspect of this movie I didn't like, and that is kind of the third act. I felt that the third act kind of screwed some stuff up simply because they introduced this element that it's like, okay, this is the bad guy now. It's like, but that you did not insinuate that this was going to be a problem. It's like, well, this is the bad guy now, and what was originally the threat is now no longer the threat, and it just felt really disjointed and clumsy to me. I think they could have done something with this if they had properly built up to it earlier in the film, but they don't really do this. And so kind of the third act ending did not work for me in terms of just the rest of the movie, because I have fun time watching this movie, but just there were some serious issues with this film. And then one of the other things that's worth mentioning is the actress that plays Abigail. For a child actor, she did a phenomenal job. I mean, she did a good job portraying like a little babe in the woods, and then portraying this like predatory creature, or whatever you want to call it. Like, she had a good night and day contrast with the two kind of sides of the coin she was portraying on screen. And so, like, that actress, she's probably going places because she did an excellent job in this movie, and I am totally going to look forward to whatever she does next in Hollywood. But anyway, if you're looking for a fun horror movie that has some issues, but it's pretty watchable for the most part, check out Abigail. I had fun with it. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it's worth a watch, and I've seen worse Universal movies that have monsters in them. And so, anyway, that's been my review of Abigail. My name's Chris O'Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.